Kicking off the list at number 10. Titan's Ocean. Yeah, we'll start this list with an ocean signal out of this world. I mean that in a literal sense. This first one comes from Thanos' home planet, Titan. Yeah, it's one of Saturn's many moons. Saturn has 82 moons in total, so if you were a werewolf and you lived on Saturn, odds are you'd be pretty exhausted. Around 10 years ago, NASA's Cassini spacecraft detected water inside the shell of ice that is that moon. That's pretty exciting. Also, water in space anywhere is exciting, but also I'm like, aliens, they're coming. To quote a Cassini team member, the search for water is an important goal in solar system exploration, and now we've spotted another place where it's abundant. Abundant, did you hear that? It's abundant. Nice. We love abundant sea creatures resting on the moon Titan. NASA has detected low frequency radio waves on Saturn's icy moon, and it sounds pretty eerie. To know this is off planet entirely, if there's water involved, I don't want to hear any space whales. I'm all set. Number 9, submarine propeller. When it comes to creepy sounds or signals heard from the ocean, here or out there, it really depends on who you ask if it's creepy or not. A submarine propeller firing up underwater, to many, is nothing. Just another day working on the Navy, if anything. But this guy, with submechanophobia, the fear of big things underwater, the sound of a submarine propeller firing up is absolutely haunting. My palms are literally sweating just reading this. The noise of the propeller is traceable, but the sonar, that can mess up some whales. Sonar underwater is so loud you can feel it through your entire body. It's definitely not something you want to witness up close. It's like standing near the speaker at a club. Your bones just feel it. Take a listen. Take a listen. Also, a little headphone warning. It's exactly what you expect. Number 8, slow down. Not to be confused with Slow Ride, that's an absolute banger from the 70s. Slow Down was recorded on May 19th, 1997, so a little bit later. It was picked up in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, just in the middle of literally nowhere. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration picked it up not once, but several times every year. Our best guess as to what this sound is, perhaps it's moving ice in Antarctica. But the fascinating part here is that this sound decreases in frequency over time. It takes about 7 minutes in total, so we can't include the entire clip or else you'd be pretty bored. But here's the clip 16 times as fast. Scientists believe the sound is a massive iceberg scratching against the ocean floor over, of course, 7 minutes. And then after 7 minutes, it came to a halt. But the fact that we hear this sound every year, that's the concerning part. We're like, why is it coming out and then halting again? Cthulhu, is that you, or is it a lot of ice melting? Most likely the latter, but who knows? Number 7, whistle. If you can whistle, honestly, hats off to you. I've been trying for years. My lips are too dry and too weak. I have weak lips, apparently. The whistle recorded in July 1997 is not weak, and as this list hints towards, it's certainly not dry. The thing with this mysterious sound is that it was only picked up by one hydrophone, meaning scientists can't pinpoint its location, making this an unexplained sound. It came from somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, so sleep with that in your head. Somewhere. How calming is that? Here's the unidentified sound. What do you think this is? The National Oceanic and the NOAA rather, has compared the sound to some volcanic activity heard in the Mariana Volcanic Arc. But again, we can't pinpoint it at all, so we have no idea. We need 3 hydrophones to do so. This one was only heard in 1. Number 6, upsweep. Unidentified yet again. Love to hear it. Literally. Sound travels much faster underwater than it does in air, more than 4 times as fast. So when we hear these noises, one, they're incredibly loud, which is the most impressive part in my opinion. But because sound travels so quickly, it's hard to find out where these calls are coming from. Upsweep is an unidentified sound that was heard throughout the entire Pacific Ocean. When the Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory fired up its sound surveillance system back in August 1991, these sounds were heard. See, unlike the sounds we've covered so far, this one happens in real time. It's not sped up because it's 17 minutes long, it's just, that's it, that's what it sounded like. These upsweeping sounds lasting a few seconds each ping is definitely concerning. The source was roughly located around New Zealand and South America, somewhere around those places, and it peaks around autumn and spring. So maybe it's just a monster tucking itself in for the winter, and then maybe it's waking back up in spring. Who knows? Scientists at the NOAA have a better idea so far. A little boring, but they believe it's underwater volcanic activity. I say boring, it's not really boring, it's just predictable, I guess. This sound has been getting lower pitched every year, so who knows? Maybe that's a bad thing, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe this thing's gonna go off. Maybe it's gonna go off tomorrow. That was 30 years ago, so any day. Number 5, Julia. Who is she? Who is this Julia chick we've been talking about? Julia sounds like a rather friendly addition to this list, but don't let her name fool you. Julia is terrifying, definitely, yeah. Back in March 1999, this noise here was recorded again by the NOAA, and this time the noise was heard across the entire Pacific Ocean hydrophone array. So across all that distance, we heard Julia. So whatever made this noise, be it an iceberg, volcanic activity, giant fish from Legend of Zelda, it's got power behind those vocals, you know, she's loud. The point of its origin is determined to be somewhere around Bransfield Straits and Cape Adare. This Cape Adare gets a lot of action in the world, sound-wise and bloop-wise, and we think it's because of icebergs, but maybe the Kraken's name is just Julia. Maybe this is her just slowly introducing herself to the world. Again, it's a long clip in real time, but sped up. Sounds like somebody's humming underwater. It's terrifying. Take a listen. This one creeps me out a lot. I think I've heard the hum before. I don't know. Maybe it was Kid Cudi in the distance. Maybe it was this hum. Either way, I'm on board. The hum has been heard for decades now. We have no idea where the hum is coming from. Our best guess is that it has something to do with, of course, as the title hints, the ocean. A resident from Woodland, England spoke out on their experience saying, it vibrates through the house. We've turned all the electricity off in the house and we can still hear it. So it's not that. It's not tinnitus, that's a high-pitched sound and this is very low. If I put my fingers in my ears, it stops. So I know it's not in my head. It's heard commonly in Hawaii, Britain, North America. So it's, hey, everywhere. It's been heard everywhere, I guess. Some have called it the Windsor hum, which is insanely close to us, hence why I think I've heard it in real life. I put the microphone to you now, people, the fine people of YouTube. Have you heard the hum? If so, where were you? Comment down below. Number 3, 2021 boom. A little bit more recent for this one. Back in early 2021, San Diego residents reacted to what sounded like a sonic boom. Well, it's been heard 3 times since the initial report, and many still have questions. I have questions. Now you have questions. Windows were shaking, doors were rattling, all of San Diego heard and felt this thing. But what was it? An earthquake? Being in San Diego and all residents are used to earthquakes, but this was entirely different. Everyone felt something new here. Also, it helps to know that no earthquakes were reported at this time, so that theory is just out of the way. And the Marines didn't take responsibility for it as well. And if it was a sonic boom from a plane, well, that would be pretty obvious. We'd kind of have an idea. We'd have a few ideas if it was a plane ripping overhead. Plus, they're not allowed to do that kind of stuff that close to the coast. December 28th, 2021, residents were posting their thoughts on Twitter. One user tweeted, San Diego is cool because I'm like, oh wow, just felt an earthquake, but not actually, it was a sonic boom. Well, keep an ear out for any more mysterious sonic booms coming from the ocean in 2022. The last one wasn't long ago at all. If you live in San Diego, drop us a comment, help us understand what's going on. Number 2, the train. This sound was given its name because, well, it sounds like a passing train in the distance. Simple as that. Sometimes it's not, scientific. It was first recorded on March 5th, 1997, and it sounds, honestly, it sounds like my PS4. It sounds really loud. It sounds like a really loud, really hot fan that's gonna just lift up and take off in the middle of playing Warzone. I'm like, hi, no, come back. Here's the clip. The leading theory as to what's making the sound is not a surprising one. Large icebergs grounding near Ross Sea and Cape Adare. Again, that's probably the most plausible explanation here. Friendly reminder that more than 80% of the ocean is undiscovered, so my only question is, what if it's not? Number 1, 52 Hertz whale. I love whales because they're the closest thing to a dinosaur, in my opinion. They're massive, we have no idea how they mate, that's still a mystery. We mentioned that in another list. They're beautiful, complex creatures that we should just leave alone. Probably, definitely. Especially the 52 Hertz whale. Well, maybe not 2 alone, because there's a documentary about this sound. Joshua Zeman made a documentary about the loneliest whale on the planet. Sounds pretty depressing, but it's equally as interesting. For decades now, we've heard this sound. Back in 1989, the US Navy first detected this sound that measured in at more than twice the frequency of a normal, healthy whale call. So this thing's loud. Originally, what got them intrigued was the fact that this could have been a military mechanical sound, of course. But then they thought, well, maybe it's an animal. Perhaps this is like a new Cthulhu hybrid dinosaur thing that someone's working on. This is a lonely whale, but why is its frequency scaring away possible friends and mates? Kicking off the list at number 10, the Bell Island boom. Back in 1978, Bell Island, located just northwest of Newfoundland, a loud boom was heard. It was powerful enough to shake houses. This thing caused property damage, right? It's pretty intense. There's a pretty large group of individuals that believe this was some sort of supernatural phenomena, of some sorts, of course. On a Sunday night, right in the middle of Jig's dinner, this flash of lightning just shook the land. Darren Bickford, who was just 12 years old at the time, was riding his bike back home to catch his favorite TV show. Pre-Netflix problems, we love those. As I approached the end of our driveway, all the birds stopped chirping, all the dogs stopped barking, it just went so still. And then it was both. It was like a shotgun blast followed by a ball of light, and then followed immediately after the second ball. The ground shook underneath me. It was the biggest noise I've ever heard in my entire life. End quote. So what were these floating balls of lightning? Where did they come from? Well, many believe it was a superweapon test conducted by either the United States or the Soviet Union. Either way, if you visit Newfoundland, keep your head up. Getting screeched in should probably help either way. Number 9. Sounds of Marianas Trench. Hold your breath for this next one, folks. Here we go. The Challenger Deep is the deepest known point on Earth's seabed. My ears were popping just looking at this. The Challenger Deep is of course located on the south side of the Marianas Trench in the Pacific Ocean. You may not witness this depression up close at any point in your life, but thanks to the internet, you can hear it. Yeah, there we go. Scientists recorded around 23 days of material on the ocean floor, and it's not just bubbles and or trouble. Only 4 manned missions have gone this deep. The last one was in 2012, so it's pretty rare to have any information down there at all. The results were pretty surprising being as deep as they were. The sounds were haunting, to say the least. Oceanographer Robert Ziak was leading this project, and many of these sounds recorded were those from the surface. Sound travels quite a ways. To quote Ziak, the ambient sound field is dominated by the sound of earthquakes, both near and far, as well as distinct moans of baleen whales and the clamor of a Category 4 typhoon that just happened to pass overhead. Yeah, all of that hitting you at the same time. You're like, next. Number 8, a big boom. Turning the calendar back to May 2010 in Pennsylvania, residents were enjoying their day when you guessed it, a loud boom, or a big boom rather, historically correct, shook residents. It shook residents figuratively and literally. Resident Kim Owen reported to the Sun Gazette news outlet that at first she didn't think much about it. That's until a friend of hers who lives only a few blocks away posted on Facebook about the incident. The post was reaching out to others in the community asking if they too heard this big boom. So far, the leading theory, believe it or not, is meteorites crashing into the Earth. The more plausible scenario is that these booms may be caused by high pressure gases being released from the Earth's surface. Even our own planet needs to release the beast sometimes. Taco Tuesdays ain't a joke. I get it, we've all been there. Number 7, mist poofers. There's a fun name, mist poofers. Sounds like a royal way of farting. Excuse me while I mist poofer. It's not a royal toot, sadly, it's actually much worse. Mist poofers are a series of loud booms heard near the waters all over the Netherlands. It's been reported as this loud crack, like thunder or a large canyon splitting in half. The might of Thor just being unleashed in the Netherlands, perhaps? Is Odin back? It sounds like he's back. I don't know, should we go check it out? It's often heard in the Bay of Fundy up here in Canada, but reports have come in as far as Japan, Ireland, really all around the world. Have you ever heard a mist poofer? Are the oceans cracking open? Or has Voldemort returned and now he's sent his army of mist poofers? Are we doomed? We're doomed. Number 6, quacker. When I first read about this, I thought it said Quaker, like the ground was perhaps splitting open like an earthquake. That would fit in with this list so far, right? Mother Nature sending loud signals that she's about to break open and blow to smithereens. Sounds okay, makes sense. The quacker, not Quaker, the quacker was heard during the Cold War. While Soviet Navy ballistic missile submarines were heading through North Atlantic and Arctic waters, they heard quacking, almost like a rivet. Whenever a submarine passed a certain area, this loud quack would come from deep below. It came from an object that was moving around. So that's scary. The Soviets thought that they overheard secret US tech down below. Yes, the deep sea duck. I've heard rumors. Let's go check it out. Scientists currently believe it came from a giant squid. That's somehow more alarming than the ocean floor cracking open to me. I don't know why. Is that alarming? That feels alarming. Kraken? Is that you? Number 5, hidden ocean heat. If you put your ear up to a seashell, if you listen closely, apparently you can hear global warming. Yeah. I'm not kidding, how depressing is this one? Back in 1991, scientists lowered these massive speakers, like these nightclub subwoofers, into the waters at Heard Island. Really? Okay, I see what you guys did there. These speakers emitted low-frequency sounds all across our oceans. These signals were later picked up by receivers near California and Bermuda. And these signals contained information on the temperatures of our oceans. Our oceans absorb more than 90% of energy left over from global warming. There were a few scientists who at the time were also concerned about how these low-frequency sounds may be affecting ocean life. Yeah, what does that sound like to a beluga whale? Not great, I assume. Number 4, snapping shrimp. If you hear this in the ocean, you're not gonna have a great time, my friend. I have to include the sounds from a snapping shrimp because for its size, it creates a sonic boom. It's extremely impressive.
Ow, that really hurt.
They're often found in coral reefs, oyster reefs, and these little guys, these pistol shrimp, they hit their prey at 100 kilometers an hour. In doing so, a large air bubble is created, and because this Mike Tyson shrimp is so quick with the jabs, the following pop is around 200 decibels. The sound alone stuns their prey, or if they're lucky, for both parties, it sometimes can kill them. The sound resembles dry burning twigs, almost like it's crackling. Almost like you're cracking your knuckles underwater. So you'd be sitting there enjoying a drink in the sand, and all of a sudden, those are 5 shrimp hitting you at the same time. Number 3, clownfish. This is the last fish entry on our list, I swear, then we'll get back to some more creepy bleeps and or bloops. Honestly, this is so interesting I could not include it. If the movie Finding Nemo was scientifically accurate, Nemo and his father would sound a lot different. It would be a horror film, realistically. Clownfish sounds are all but a joke. In order to obtain dominance, these fish make aggressive popping noises at one another, which is so funny because they're so cute. Their jaws open and close at high speeds. They basically beatbox if there's an intruder or if there's a possible mate. Don't get clowned by a clownfish, keep your ears open. Number 2, shifting plates. Back into the big we're doomed stuff. This one I actually remember hearing for myself, believe it or not. Either that or my neighbor let out the most amazing fart. Back in 2013, a woman in British Columbia began to hear a loud sound that resembled a trumpet, like the slow, loud, ominous trumpet from afar. Quickly, people began to question just how real the video was because there weren't any explanations right off the bat. Or at least there weren't any explanations that made sense. Reports of the same began all over the world, from Texas to Norway. What was this thing? The sounds differ just slightly, and no one's been able to figure out just what these sounds are or where they're coming from. One professor from the University of Saskatchewan, another concerned Canadian, believes that these noises are electromagnetic waves coming from the Northern Lights. Yes, the beautiful Northern Lights. It's pretty loud, huh? I'm like, what? I didn't know this at all. Northern Lights are loud? The apocalypse sure is beautiful. And finally, number 1, the buzzer. No, I'm not talking about Kawhi Leonard when he, we're still thinking about it. That's a good one. This one legit gives me goosebumps. That's why I'm gonna end the video off. We're jumping out of the sea for this one, so lose those goggles. In the 1980s, when a radio tower just north of Moscow began transmitting these random and creepy sounding beeps and bloops, come 1992, these sounds began to change. That year, it suddenly switched to a buzzing sound, short and sweet, around 25 times a minute. These strange routines would be interrupted once every few weeks by a male voice, which would then be reciting a string of numbers and words, like he was trying to reset the Winter Soldier or something like that. And to make things more creepy here, in June of 2010, and also in August of the same year, the station briefly stopped sending out signals altogether. Maybe they ran out of battery, I don't know, maybe they needed a lozenge break, some lemon tea. All that talking that entire time, that's gotta damage the vocals. At the end of August in 2010, the station again changed and there began to be different shuffling sounds and thuds that can now be heard in the background. And often these little snippets of the dance of little swans from Swan Lake would also be interrupted into the broadcast. Yeah, if any secret agents are listening to this, I want in. Whatever operation this is going on in the ocean, in a submarine, send me Swan Lake Mission Impossible briefings. Knock twice, I'll do a pirouette. Let's do it. A pirouette, kick some bad guy's head off. Easy.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have this haunting call. Whales truly are some of the coolest animals on Earth, and humpback whales are no exception. The males of the species are known for their songs, which last from 10 to 20 minutes and are actually pretty complex. They will repeat these songs for hours at a time, and it honestly isn't exactly known why they sing these songs at all. All the males in the group will produce the same song and it will change seasonally. The females are also able to produce noise, but for some reason it is only the males who seem to produce these long songs. It is unclear how the whales even produce these sounds, however, because they don't actually have vocal cords. This is all super cool and interesting, but the whole reason you're here is for the sound, so let's take a listen to a more haunting track released by the humpback whale. Okay, so please tell me I'm not alone in thinking that that was the most beautifully haunting sound I've ever heard come from the sea. But also imagine being alone in the ocean, not knowing what that was, and then hearing it. Probably pretty terrifying, right? At least we're all safe here in YouTube land. In our number 9 spot today, we have this marine chorus. Okay, so out of context, if I played you this sound, what would you think it is? Definitely not something underwater, right? Well, as it turns out, this sound was indeed captured under the water, and these are the sounds of fish calls. While I always expected the chorus of marine animals to sound a little more similar to the stylings of Sebastian the crab, apparently that isn't even close. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even know that most fish had calls, but it turns out that our human ears just can't perceive all of the hoots, moans, barks, and chirps that take place in the vast seas. This recording actually helped scientists realize that there are fish who sing together in a chorus every day at dusk and dawn. There have now been around 800 species of fish that have been identified and confirmed to make some form of noise, and apparently some fish even engage in shouting matches in noisier parts of the ocean, which is kind of hilarious to imagine. I guess on the list of creepy noises, this one is less creepy and more just informative. In our number 8 spot today, we have the whistle. This is a sound that was first recorded in 1997 by the NOAA and was the source of many mysteries for years while people speculated about what may have caused the sound. While it still isn't exactly clear, it is now believed that the sound may have come from an underwater volcano eruption. If you didn't know, underwater or submarine volcanoes are located in all oceans on our Earth, and they're extremely interesting. There are certain kinds of marine animals that only exist near these extreme environments. Many submarine volcanoes are located near the areas of tectonic plate formations, which are also known as mid-ocean ridges. There's a YouTube user called Some Canadian, and they left a comment on a video of this whistle sound that pretty much sums it up exactly. First, we'll listen to the sound played at 10 times the original speed. The comment read, quote, "It could be the sound of something moving through tunnels. 1. Volcanic eruptions and gases. 2. Something big and hungry. You choose." I think they might really be onto something there. In our number 7 spot today, we have bloop. Why are all of the weirdest ocean sounds first recorded in 1997? Bloop is another one that came from that year, and it was a loud and unusual sound that was placed as occurring several times off the southern coast of South America, and it was so loud that it could be heard over 5,000 kilometers away. At first, researchers were confused because, while the sound was actually similar to known sounds of living creatures, it was just way too loud that not even the blue whale, the largest living creature, could have produced it. So what is it then? Well, as it turns out, it is in fact not the Kraken, and instead it is actually consistent with ice quakes that are generated by large icebergs as they crack and fracture. It seems like this sound going with that explanation doesn't really make sense, but hey, I'm no scientist. But here's the sound for you to judge for yourself. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Western Pacific biotwang. In 2014, researchers and scientists heard weird sounds coming from the Mariana Trench, which, for the record, seems like the worst place for there to be strange noises coming from. For years, experts couldn't pin down this sound, and it was dubbed the Western Pacific biotwang, and while there is now a theory that was proposed by researchers from Oregon State University, they have also said that they might be entirely wrong. First, for reference, here's a little clip of the sound I'm talking about. Okay, so if you're like me, my mind immediately went to something alien related or some sort of creature that perhaps we haven't yet discovered. I mean, this is the Mariana Trench we're talking about. The theory put forward by the Oregon State researchers was that perhaps this may be a new type of baleen whale call. Okay, that's probably the best of all of the options, but I really don't like when someone tells me the answer to a scientific mystery only to tell me that that might not actually be the answer at all. While the low part of the sound would make sense to attribute to the baleen whale, it's the end high-pitched twangy part that would be incredibly unique. The wide range of frequencies in the sound are what continues to baffle those who are trying to find the source of this mysterious sound. In our number 5 spot today, we have Julia. Julia is a sound that was recorded in 1999 by the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, which I've already talked about today. It sounds like it could be straight out of a horror movie, so considering it was a sound that came from our ocean and at first no one could tell where it had come from, it It really was quite frightening. This sound has now likely been demystified, as researchers are pretty positive they know the origin of it. It is now believed that this sound was caused by an iceberg running aground off Antarctica. The sound, however, was insanely loud. It was so loud that it could be heard over the entire equatorial Pacific Ocean Autonomous Hydrophone Array. Researchers were later able to narrow down what they believe may have been the point where the sound originated, although they've never actually been able to pinpoint it exactly. Most of the time when people hear the Julia sound, they hear it sped up at 16 times the original speed, but today we are going to listen to a clip of the sound at regular speed because I think it is much more eerie this way. In our number 4 spot today we have knock. Okay, this is one that I'll admit was not captured by a submarine, but it was still underwater and it truly is terrifying. A few years ago, a beluga whale named Knock, who was unfortunately in captivity, was recorded as he swam below the water. Beluga whales have been called the canaries of the sea, and for good reason, but Knock really wanted to up the ante and instead blessed us all with this sound. Knock had this uncanny ability to mimic the rhythm and tone of human voices, and it truly is kind of frightening. It of course is also a little sad, as part of this was probably because he spent most of his life being forced to listen to humans speak because he was being held in captivity. Before this recording of Knock, the voices of belugas and their sometimes human-like sounds have been talked about, but Knock was the first time it was recorded, and honestly, I kind of wish it hadn't been. In our number 3 spot today we have the bioduck. Since the 1960s, this sound has absolutely stumped researchers who heard it. This sound was basically what the name attributed to it would suggest. It sounded like some sort of mechanical duck. For decades, researchers would hear this sound and it would often be heard and recorded again in the spring and winters. After all of these years though, it seems as though the answers to this mysterious sound are finally coming to light. In 2013, researchers attached sensors that collect acoustic data to 2 whales. One of those tags recorded for 18 hours and the other for 8, and the whales they were attached to were traveling with other whales in groups of 5 to 40, and they were all eating basically the entire time. Throughout this time, with the tags on the whales, there were a total of 32 calls heard, and this data is what led researchers to finally understand where the bioduck sound was coming from. As it turns out, this mysterious sound was actually the call of the minke whale. Researchers still aren't exactly clear as to what the call means to the whales, but it was a fantastic discovery that finally closed an almost 50-year-old scientific mystery. In our number 2 spot today we have upsweep. We all know how little we know about the ocean, and that also includes what kind of creatures lie in it. So while this mysterious sound out of context probably wouldn't be that freaky, when put into this situation it becomes quite a bit more eerie. This sound is referred to as upsweep, and it was caught when the Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory started its sound surveillance system in August of 1991. The sound is apparently more seasonal, with its peaks in spring and fall, but it is unclear if the changing of seasons is responsible for this sound, or if it's coming from something that lurks in the ocean and remains undiscovered. Just for reference, here's a clip of that sound played at 20 times the original speed. It is possible that this sound could be coming from underwater volcanic activity, but it is also possible that it's not, so who really knows? In our number 1 spot today we have an earthquake. Okay, so to add another creepy Mariana Trench sound to this list, we have one that was taken from the bottom of the Challenger Deep. In fact, it was the first ever sound recording to be taken from the bottom of the Challenger Deep, so it's a pretty cool scientific advancement as well as a terrifying sound. Despite the crushing pressures and the fact that there's no sunlight, the Challenger Deep is actually pretty noisy, and that is because of the fact that sound travels a really long way underwater, which ends up kind of turning the Challenger Deep into a sort of echo chamber of oceanic sounds. So while the recording was able to pick up things like the sound of a boat almost 11 kilometers overhead and the sounds of whale calls, they were also able to pick up the sound of a magnitude 5 earthquake rumbling near Guam on July 16th, 2015. not gonna lie, while being one of the scariest things I've ever heard, this is also one of the coolest things I've ever heard in my life too. Science really is just so cool sometimes.